Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Welcome to Business Line's State of Economy podcast with the theme of marketing. I'm Chitra Narayanan, editorial consultant with Business Line. Two recent reports have put the spotlight on household consumption in India. One is a report by People Research on India's consumer economy, or PRICE, which is titled The Rise of the Middle Class, and which says that the size of the middle class is really increasing. Another report is by Kantar. It's called Consumer Connections 2023, and which talks about family size shrinking and how it's impacting consumption. Using these two reports as the peg, in this podcast, we would like to examine the changing consumption trends in India and the new middle class. For this topic, we have with us Shivakumar, operating partner of Advent International. He's a constant on this show and has a wealth of insights on marketing subjects. And we have Mayank, Shah, senior category head at Parle Products. And Mayank is here for a special reason because in the Kantar report, Parle was ranked the number one brand. Welcome, Shiv and Mayank. And without much ado, let's dive into the topic.
Welcome to the show, Mayank and Shiv.
Absolutely a pleasure to be here, Chitra, along with Mayank. My pleasure to do this.
Pleasure to be part of this pen, Chitra.
Yeah. So let me ask you to give your views on both have very close views on the consumption and the middle class and the consumer. So is the Indian middle class changing in terms of size, income, mindset, character, propensity to spend? You have your eyes close to the ground. So can you share your insights?
Sure. So we're seeing, a huge change happening by the virtue of, mobile and media being an enabler. We're seeing a huge shift in the rural mindset. So rural is no more what it was, some years back. And that is adding to the middle class and upper middle class consumers in India. The way the mindset is changing within the rural and semi-urban consumers, I think they are aspiring for, more or less very similar things as that of, urban consumers. As a result of which, I think, certain premium or semi-premium products, or even the attitudes, their consumption habits are changing big time. What has also happened is that given that they have higher disposable income and they have, more time with them, I think at times, they are more clued in on what's happening. They're more clued in on trends and stuff like that. What we've seen in the last few years is that, there is a sizable increase in the Indian middle class and the consumption of, premium and semi-premium items, primarily driven by tier 1, tier 2 towns. We're seeing a good amount of growth coming in from semi-urban tier 1 and tier 2 towns.
So, Chitra, the story of the Indian middle class has been an article since 1991. If you remember, I think India Today first talked about the rise of the Indian middle class in 1991. That's about 30 years ago. And many people give many definitions, many simple things. Is the middle class growing? Absolutely certain. There's no doubt about it. I'll give you a simple number. A lot of the newspaper reportage over the last few days has said that 67 million people have paid income tax last year. Okay, because income tax closes on July 30th. So you take 67 million people, multiply that by 4.4, you get 292 million people. Okay, that's the middle. Anybody who's paying income tax, you can roughly say is middle class, almost certain. You take away duplication of 10% of working couples, etc. You're talking of 270 million or 260 million. To this you add rural, which is not taxed. Now the rural population which is not taxed could be anything between 100 million to 200 million. So even if I take the bottom number 100 million, in a simple roundabout manner, you're talking of 350 million to 400 million people classified as middle class. That's the first one. The second one, if you actually look at the price data, in 2005, we had 2 million rich households. In 2020, we had 11 million rich households. And in 2031, we'll have 35 million rich households. This is, by the price definition, people who earn more than 30 lakhs per annum. Second, if you look at the middle class, in 2005, we had 30 million middle class households. In 2020, we had 91 middle class households. And in 2031, we are expected to have 165 million middle class households. In the next few years, the middle class will become the median. And they will certainly change everything to do with consumption. They'll certainly change everything to do with brands, distribution, etc., which I'm sure that we'll discuss. The middle class is evolving and will be the main medium in a few years' time.
While the price report said the size is growing exponentially, the Kantar report said the character, as in family sizes are shrinking and more nuclear families are there and spend in different ways than joint families. This Kantar report also put Parle as the top FMCG brand in terms of consumer reach points. So Mayank, as a brand which is reaching out to the consumer most, can you give insights onto how this shrinking family could change the consumption? Especially because I think pack sizes could change, right?
Absolutely. So, if you go through the report, and I was there when it was presented, we are seeing more nuclear families in urban India, which is, even conventional wisdom will tell you that. And what happens is when you're talking about urban India, semi-urban India, where nuclear families are on the rise, convenience plays a very important role. So when you talk about packaged food, that becomes one of the important categories to fall back on in terms of, convenience for the homemaker or for the housewife. So consumption of packaged food goes up significantly, as a result of which most food companies are benefited, most processed food companies are benefited, and you see, a good amount of consumption happening in those nuclear households. In fact, they're more open to innovations, they are more open to new products, new ideas, and new categories. They're also the ones who are driving the growth of, quite a few packaged things. So if we talk about the nuclear families, they are shaping the food market. They are the drivers in terms of, they are the early adapters to many packaged items. They are also the ones who are disproportionately contributing to consumption of processed food and packaged food, given that, they're looking at convenience. And that's what was also coming out in the Kantar report. We see a significant higher adoption of packaged food, especially in nuclear families. Of course, that doesn't mean that the joint families or large families, they do not consume it. What differs there is, the types or categories which are consumed and the pack sizes, as you rightly said. So if you look at the other report that Kantar came up with and which they have started this year onwards, which is out of home consumption, a lot of consumption also happens, when you talk about nuclear families and they are mostly out, the incidence of working women in nuclear families is high. As a result of which consumption out of home consumption is also higher in those families. And we've seen that also being reported from this year onwards. And you've seen, some of those companies which otherwise one would find, relatively down in terms of ranking in home consumption are going up. I'll also like to delve upon, take this opportunity to delve upon the channels. So if you look at some of the channels which are growing phenomenally, like quick com, they are driven by, the convenience aspect, especially by the nuclear families where, time is at a premium. Out of the four family members, probably two of them or three of them are working. And, due to paucity of time, they fall back on quick com. More often than not, they order things at the last moment. And as a result of which, it has implication. Now, normally when you go to a modern trade, there is tendency of buying bigger packs. But when you go to a quick com site and you are ordering something, those packs are typically mid-size or smaller size packs bundled together or something like that.
Yeah, got it. Shiv, would you like to add?
Yeah. If you look at the data, Chitra, the average Indian family makes 152 trips per annum to purchase something or the other. 80% of that is food. Food is understandable because people seek freshness in food all the time. Okay, people will check the packaging code and expiry date of biscuits, chips, etc., etc. So that's what it is. In terms of the highest stock category in the country of the 11 million FMCG outlets is actually shampoo at about 88%. I think biscuits is number 2 or 3. Then you have detergent, soaps, toothpaste. Tea, which used to be the number 1 a few years ago, has dropped out of the top 10. It's no longer in the top 10. And specifically pack sizes, because consumers are shopping so much more often, the average FMCG pack size has dropped from 227 grams in 2021 to 181 grams this year. That's a drop of 21%. That's a lot. But that presents a great opportunity in terms of revenue management, in terms of thinking through what kind of pack sizes will people buy. India has about 40% fixed price points, low unit price packs, sachets, plus fixed price points. The challenge is, how do you maintain a fixed price point and innovate to a price point above that? I think that's what's important. And in terms of channels, which Mayank touched upon, people who are omni-channel shoppers, the same report says that omni-channel has doubled in the last 2 years, from 3 million to 6.4 million households. Omni-channel typically is e-commerce plus modern trade plus general trade put together. These consumers tend to consume more categories, they tend to consume more large packs and tend to consume more innovation. So that's how I see this business of pack sizes and shopping trips.
Okay. So, the other aspect of the changes in consumption pattern is this premiumization. We've been talking about premiumization for a long time. And at the same time, a lot of the newly affluent consumer is upgrading and opting for premium, India seems to be still highly price conscious. Look at the fuss over the tomato prices, so they will begrudge spending on basics. So how do you look at this dichotomy? How do marketers tackle this price challenge? Shiv, you want to move first, or Mayank? One of you take one?
Yeah, sure. Happy to go. The first thing is, the premium trend will happen, will continue to happen, Chitra. Okay, you cannot say that it won't happen. You don't need to justify it. The Indian consumer is not gullible. She is your mom and my mom. She's not gullible at all. She recognizes value when she sees it. She recognizes when something is highly priced out of range. India has always been an aspirational market. There's no doubt about it. If you look at premium portfolio, in most categories, the premium portfolio of a company is about 20-25%. And in times which are challenged, that premium portfolio, typically defined as margins of having more than 50% gross margin. The economy portfolio, the mass portfolio, is about 30%. In times like this, you just have to ensure that you have to grow your premium portfolio. The mistake many companies make is they drive for volume, hell for leather for volume, they discount like mad, and suddenly they dry up on profits. The second mistake they make in times like this is to cut back on advertising and not give their brand enough tailwind. That's another big mistake that people do. Okay? And you should not do that. The third mistake people do is to cut grammage and to cut quality. One of the chips company has just cut grammage, went back after 2 months. They are now growing at 2% when the market is growing maybe higher than that. So you cannot confuse trade. One of the important lessons of inflation always is, remember in India, when you have 11 million retail outlets, that guy feels the inflation pressure more than anybody else. The retailer. His earning drops if categories drop. So he will always push to consumers brands which he thinks are damn good value in inflationary times. And that is something most marketing people and sales people just don't understand. The other thing which happens in inflationary times when markets slow down, Chitra, and I'll give you examples of that, is I think CEOs, marketing teams stop telling the truth. I'll give you a tangible example. In the middle of 1990s, the coffee prices, thanks to El Nino, went up by 200%. And in Tamil Nadu, to drink coffee was as good as paying your monthly rent for a 1 or a 2 bedroom house. The market tanked by 32%. But in Hindustan Lever, the coffee team was blind and they just refused to accept it, and they kept telling the sales guys, you're doing the wrong things. I was the regional manager of South. They actually came and I was away traveling to Calcutta to do a speech. They harassed the sales team till 4 in the morning, telling them that you need to do more. And sharing information that categories have slowed down for whatever set of reasons is very important. Ensuring that your profitability is met, not just volume, is very important when you have inflationary trends. And these are things which bad habits which companies get into. And this tends to overhang a few years after the inflationary trend. And then again, everybody will wake up and say, why are we not driving premium and innovation? So this is all correlated. And the most important thing in inflationary times is please ensure that you have a great narrative to the retailer, that you've not cut quality, you've not cut grammage, you're actually investing in the brand to grow it. That is what works. Everything else I have seen over 20, 30 years does not work.
Okay. So my Parle has also got onto the premiumization trend. So you can share your learnings of during the inflation. Have the mass brands run better, or how are things shaping? Because even actually the pandemic had an impact where people stuck to the premium, right?
I completely agree with what Shiv shared, that you have to be very honest. And Indian consumer is absolutely value conscious. So, while, you cannot play around with the quality, especially during inflationary times, this big attempt of probably compromising a bit on quality, saving a bit on cost that way, that's something that should be avoided. Secondly, I think, what would also help, or rather, in fact, what is helping us today when we talk about our entire Platina range or our entire premium products is, probably offering them greater value in terms of right pack sizes. A semi-urban or a rural consumer may not be very comfortable buying a 50 rupee, 70 rupee biscuit pack, a premium pack, but you can always offer him a 10 rupee pack, probably with lesser number of biscuits, same quality, same product, and at more or less same pro rata price. You need to reverse engineer your offering in terms of managing your packaging cost and stuff like that. But if you can do that, they see a great value in it, and they normally buy it. So I just like to share one, recent market visit experience that I had. I was visiting a small place called Jagdishpur. It's a 5,000 population village, in Unnao, next to Kanpur. And I was generally checking on, products which normally sell there more conventionally, we think so, like, Parle G or a 2020 cookie or a Magic Screen, which are all value creams, cookies, and glucose biscuits. And I was surprised to find bourbon and jam biscuits and stuff like that from our range as well there. And, I was generally chatting up with a retailer, and she rightly said, he has to be sold on the idea. So I said, भैया आप ये सब बेचते हो, पर आपको तो ज्यादा ग्लूकोज और वो सब आपके वहां से बिकता होगा. And this was a B class of shop, and he said, नहीं सर, हमारा ये भी बहुत अच्छा जाता है. To which I said, but rural में ज्यादा ये बिकता है. He told me that सर ये तो rural में बिकता है ग्लूकोज, और वो सब ज्यादा rural में बिकता है. I was utterly surprised. I mean, the way things are changing. And I said, rural क्या होता है? Next day I went to another place in Lucknow district, small place called Kishanganj, which is about 700, 800, 1,000 population kind of thing. And that's where I saw more of those things selling and stuff like that. So geographies are being redefined, consumers there are being redefined. And when you talk about premium, while we may think certain things to be premium, given the right pack size, given the right offering, and given the right value, they are very well accepted even in lower pop strata or rural areas as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting you talk about this geographical difference and all that, because we have kind of seen some blurring of boundaries between urban and rural. For instance, cosmetics, a lot of premium beauty products do very well in rural. So is there a homogeneity happening, and how do mass marketers tackle this? Thanks to digital and awareness, and they know the information at the same time as every other urban household. So how do you tackle this kind of homogeneity that is coming into play?
Since their aspirations are getting very similar, I would not say 100%, but pretty close to or pretty similar to their urban counterparts, I think what really makes a difference is the same offering being repackaged, relabeled, or offered to them in a different way. So as I just shared that maybe a 5 rupee or a 10 rupee pack of a bourbon or a jam biscuit, or for that matter a cookie, chocolate chip cookie would work really well in those areas. They may not be ready to shell out at one go because they're a little more value conscious than their urban counterparts, but in terms of their outlook, in terms of their aspirations, since they're exposed to media, I mean, you should see what they follow in media. And, I think given that they have more time, to themselves, I think they're clued into many things which probably their urban counterparts are not in terms of trends and stuff like that. So they're aspiring for those kind of things. The only thing is that you have to ensure that, see, they traditionally or conventionally, they were not used to some of those things. And in last 5-10 years, they have started, consuming. So it might take a bit of time for them to reach to a level where their quantum of consumption may go up. But the consumption of those categories is not really very different from their urban counterparts. So how do you repackage those offerings for them is something that really would make the difference and, would give you success as a brand market here.
Yeah, all right. Also, we are sticking to this geographical differences. I mean, apart from rural and urban, there's also stark differences in consumption in the south and north, and maybe east and west. So, income levels are certainly different. South seems to be more affluent. And family sizes also, we've seen that there are more nuclear families in the South. How does this present a challenge to marketers?
So for certain functional items and traditional items, you're right. I think, there are differences that we see across zones. But largely, I mean, given the exposure, as I said earlier, and exposure to media, very similar kind of things and a changing outlook towards consumption. What is happening is for aspirational products or for what we call in food, indulgence products and stuff like that, I think it's far more homogeneous. Probably, certain flavors like chocolate and all are very well received today across India. Now, this is very different from what it was about, let's say, 15-20 years back. Around 2007, we launched one of our premium products called Milano. It's a premium cookie with, chunky chocolate chips. When we launched it, it was very well received in, West and South, not so much in North. And I was visiting Allahabad, and I was in one of the retail outlets in Civil Lines. Civil Lines, Allahabad has one of the best gentries in UP, and you are talking about one of the best areas or suburbs in Allahabad, which is Civil Lines. In Civil Lines, in one retail outlet, a A-class retail outlet, I was generally chatting and I was taking a feedback on the new launch, which was Milano. And the retailer told me, ये आपने क्या देख के launch किया है? I'm talking about 2007. कुछ काजू वाजू अंदर डाला होता, बादाम पिस्ता डाला होता तो लोग पैसे भी देते. इसका कौन 30 रुपया देगा? I was surprised. From 15 years back, this kind of an outlook, where they still traditionally believed that kaju, badam, dry fruits are more premium, to today, where chocolate is a far more accepted taste across India, across all zones. So when it comes to indulgence, when it comes to aspirational things, I think it's far more homogeneous. It still might differ in very basic or functional things. So for example, let's say, if I'm talking about biscuits, a East market would typically gravitate towards, a Mari kind of offering in functional biscuits, whereas, a West or North would more align towards a glucose kind of variety. But when it comes to aspirational products, I think, it's far more homogeneous.
Okay, that's interesting. So taste matters also. I'm presuming coconut biscuits would do well with certain geography and so on, right? Yeah. Okay. So Shiv, your take on this?
Yeah. The first thing about consumption is, Chitra, that consumers are getting time-starved. And when they get time-starved, they're looking at convenience. What is convenient? What can I replace my traditional chore of building something, mixing a few ingredients, etc.? Take something like ID Foods. ID Foods gives you fresh batter, okay? 48 hours shelf life, 72 hours shelf life, etc. They also give you fresh decoction. So what does the housewife do? Buy the ID batter, make the dosa, make the idli, and finish it. Rather than spending an hour or half an hour trying to get the batter, mixture ready. So that's the first thing. So time is at a premium for consumers, and time and premium products, etc., go hand in hand because it's easy for them. If you look at 4 platforms which are actually impacting both urban and rural India significantly, which is leading to a rise in consumption, the first is e-commerce. Today I think Amazon supplies at least one order to something like 97% of PIN codes. So e-commerce, the platform is across the country. So there is no boundary of urban or rural India for e-commerce. The second is personal loans. Thanks to digitization of the banking system, we see a number of loans sprouting up everywhere, and I'll give you some data around that. The third is modern trade. Modern trade is now going with people like D-Mart into second-tier towns, third-tier towns. That's the third platform. The fourth platform, which is actually driving a lot of aspiration, is OTT. OTT is available across the board. People are seeing the same type of ads. People are seeing aspirational content, etc. If you take loans right now, one of the fundamental shifts which has happened in India is, in the past, income minus expenditure was saving. Today, it's income minus expenditure minus loans availed is equal to aspiration plus savings. That's what it is. So today, personal loans are more than non-food credit and industry right now, industry loans in this country. People are taking personal loans, which are unsecured loans, to pay their credit card bills. People are taking unsecured loans or personal loans to go on holiday. So all the drivers of consumption that we have always talked about is happening in large measure thanks to the amount of personal loans people are willing to take. And if you just look at durables data, the middle class, only 71% own a refrigerator, only 30% own a car, only 7% own air conditioners, and only 13% own a computer. All these categories are prime candidates for loans. The number one loan in this country is the housing loan. The number two loan is the personal loan. The number three loan is the vehicle loan. So loans and easy access to credit is driving significant consumption across the country, apart from e-commerce and modern trade.
Okay. I think to an extent, what you and Mayank have touched upon this digital commerce changing the consumption game totally, and we've seen the arrival of ONDC. And I mean, even for all that, right now, the penetration of e-commerce is not all that high, but ONDC hopes to push the penetration of e-commerce to as much as
That's not true, Chitra. In metros today, e-commerce is bigger than modern trade. In some parts, believe it or not. It's already double digit in many metros. So don't go by this thing that it's not happening. It's happening big time.
It is happening. I mean, especially during the pandemic, it did happen, but we've not reached like 50% levels of the West, right? So
that will take time. For example, one of the big things which is happening on e-commerce, you'll be surprised. The top 3 countries on vegetable e-commerce are actually UK, China, and India. It's happening. You'll be surprised, Chitra. So don't go by what the FMCG boys tell you. They are the last people in the queue to digitize.
Mayank must be.
No, he's absolutely right. So the way I think e-commerce grown in last few years, and COVID has only catalyzed it. I think convenience is playing a very important role in terms of, and that's what I was trying to touch upon when I was talking about QCom. So, if you talk about QCom, the way QCom growth is happening, there is no reason why in a country like India, where people are so value conscious, should go out and buy things from QCom when they can get it at better rates, at better value from MT. Despite of that, the way QCom is growing today and e-com is growing today, I think is phenomenal. So people are ready to pay for that convenience, and the way that conversion is happening, a lot of consumers moving on to quick com and e-com, I think is phenomenal. From the earlier Nielsen report, which talked about 10% contribution of FMCG coming from e-com, including QCom by 2030. I think today we are sitting at almost about 3.5-4%. What really pandemic has catalyzed is adaptation to this, and I think people have also realized and they have started paying for the convenience that they are getting by means of doorstep delivery.
So the other point on digital commerce is certainly revolutionizing consumption. Is it also leading to more categories coming into play?
Yes. People who are on e-commerce are tending to buy more categories, and they're tending to buy more bigger pack sizes, by and large, especially the omni-channel shoppers. That data is there in that Kantar study also. The challenge for the e-commerce players, and Mayank talked about e-commerce, etc., is that e-com by definition cannot be premium, because e-commerce is a virtual site which gives you the full range of brands. So the challenge for a Flipkart or the challenge for an Amazon is they cannot upsell. They cannot go the premium route to get profitable. That's the fundamental challenge that all the platform companies will deal with. And that is something that they really need to address. They do not have a chance to charge 100 rupees more just because you're shopping on that site.
And that we have, people are opting to go direct to there are a lot of brands that are premium and D2C.
A brand can be premium. The challenge to the platform is profitability. They can't go premium. That's what I'm trying to say.
So closing thoughts from both of you on consumption. How gung-ho are you?
I think as far as Indian economy is concerned, I think we are in a very sweet spot. In fact, we are at an inflection point. Given all the positives, the way income levels are increasing, to the demography, that's, probably the biggest advantage that India has today. I think the next 2 decades are going to be, really big in terms of way things would pan out for marketeers, for Indian economy, and for Indian brands. I feel, it's going to be very exciting times, next 2 decades. And I think there would be a lot of things that would probably shape up as we go forward. Some of those which probably we are able to focus, some of those which probably may come up completely, unexpected.
Okay. And Shiv?
The many things which lead to consumption, time I talked about, convenience I talked about, sensory appeal is very important. Innovation concepts are very important. I think new business models to drive consumption, very important. So I think the whole host of activities we have, thanks to being a fixed price point market in most of FMCG, 40% of it, we have traditionally thought of penetration as the route to grow consumption too. Penetration as the route to grow consumption of fixed price points works in a few categories like shampoo, where there's productivity involved. It does not work in most other categories. So consumption requires very different type of thinking, which marketers need to build those capabilities. Okay, and there you can learn a lot from the best, Chitra. That's what I would say.
Okay. Very insightful conversation. Thank you, Shiv. Thank you, Mayank.